Welcome to ICOSA's Driving Force Radio Show, where we discover what drives today's leaders. On today's show, we have Governor Bill Ritter and the Director of the Center for the New Energy Economy with us. Welcome to the show, Governor Ritter.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. And Steve McMillan, the business editor at the Denver Post. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks a lot.
Governor Ritter, we want to jump right in. You know, you have so many exciting things going on right now at the Center for the New Energy Economy. Can you give us a little bit of background on what you're doing up there?
Sure. The Center for the New Energy Economy is something that I founded when I left the governor's office in 2011 at the invitation of the president of Colorado State University, Fort Collins. He asked me if I'd be willing to come on and start this center that would really be about trying to advance clean energy policy at the state level. And our premise is that not much is happening or is going to happen in the near term at the federal level, and with that we can do some things we believe by working with governors, with legislators, with public utility commissions. So that's part of it. The second thing, I do a lot of speaking around the country just about clean energy. We tell the Colorado story to some extent, but it's really a much broader story than just in Colorado. It really has a national scope to it, what's going on. The center is also now partnered with an institute in China called the East China Normal Energy Institute, and that was something, as governor, I wrote a memorandum of understanding about trying to develop a relationship between CSU and East China Normal. It happened, and now I am involved on the policy in working as kind of a co-director of the policy part. We have someone else who's the director of the Policy Institute, Brian Wilson. And then finally, we're working a lot on natural gas. We're working on natural gas when we work with states, trying to drive sort of clean energy agenda, but also at CSU, we have a phenomenal number of researchers who are involved in some way in researching issues that implicate natural gas production, natural gas consumption. And so what we're doing at CSU is trying to pull together all those folks into one initiative. The center that I have co-hosted, along with a variety of other groups at CSU, a natural gas symposium in the October of last year. We're going to do it again this coming year. And so we're involved in a variety of different things that have to do with really what's the energy picture look like for America in the 21st century.
Sure. So, you know, there's so much conversation and discussion about the new energy economy and clean energy alternatives. What are the real clean energy alternatives? I mean, you hear so much about it, but what is it?
Well, I think people in Washington, D.C. are fond of now saying all of the above, although what they'll be able to do about it this year may be none of the above. But they do say that. You heard the president say in the State of the Union. And I think what people mean by that is certainly renewable energy will be a part of a clean energy picture, a portfolio. Energy efficiency, there's a great deal of power in energy efficiency, the things that we do to reduce energy consumption by using less energy. I think there is, in my way of thinking, a great role for natural gas to play in the clean energy agenda. There's been a variety of things recently that have to do with, is natural gas, cleaner? We're looking at methane leakage as a part of the problem. It's a greenhouse gas emittant, so what about methane leakage? But the natural gas industry, if it solves some of the problems that have come up over the last couple of years as that industry has grown, I think it has every opportunity to be part of a clean energy agenda. So it's on the transportation side, electric vehicles, natural gas vehicles, fuel cell vehicles. On the building sector side, energy efficiency is probably one of the biggest things, but also trying to deploy different kinds of renewable energy in really interesting and new ways. And then the electricity sector. Those are just all a part of it, and it really is about emissions. It's, can we look at the emissions portfolio in America and say, 10 years from now, we can really get our arms around serious reductions that will help us both from a public health aspect, but also, I would argue, from addressing this issue that relates to climate change.
Sure.
Governor, can you speak specifically to how you're working with different governors and planners on the state level on an energy agenda, but also on the federal level, what are you guys doing? And it seems like an energy policy is stalled, any kind of comprehensive energy policy is stalled at that level.
Yeah, Steve, let's go to the federal level first. There's just not much happening other than those things that can happen by executive order or some executive agency. We've seen the Department of Interior really try and deploy more renewable energy and try and streamline the permitting process on Bureau of Land Management land. That's a for instance of a place where the federal government's been able to do some things because they didn't have to do it legislatively. Legislatively, I think you're exactly right, it is stalled. I've had a number of people who are either serving in the United States Senate or the House of Representatives saying, listen, we're probably not going to do anything significant coming up to the November 2012 election. There's still some hope that they'll pass or they'll extend the production tax credit, because that means so much to our wind industry in Colorado, but even nationally. There's another thing called PACE financing. I think you probably know about PACE financing. We have it in Colorado, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac kind of put a hold on it. And so they're trying to pass legislation that would allow PACE financing that's been passed in state legislatures to go forward. I can explain that if we want to go into more detail, but it really gets into the weeds. So those kinds of things that are maybe discrete parts of figuring out ways to move this agenda going forward at the national level, but not much else. There's just not going to be comprehensive national energy policy before November 2012. And after it, I doubt that they'll get that done in a lame duck session, if in fact he's a lame duck. But if Obama succeeds, then there may be some effort and some ambition to do this comprehensively. So at the state level, in a state like Michigan, we're trying to work at fuel switching. We've done some things, limited things. I went there for a couple of days, met with members of the governor's staff, with the lieutenant governor, with 35 different legislators. We explained how we had done that in Colorado. They have really an ideal situation. They import all of their coal, so you lose no coal jobs in the state. They have really old coal plants that are high emitters that they could take down, transition to natural gas. And they also are sitting on natural gas, so if they have a good way to extract it that's environmentally sound, they wind up creating a lot of jobs with that fuel switching plan and probably keep their energy prices the same or maybe even reduce them depending upon the price of gas. In Delaware, they set up an energy efficiency utility. Haven't really figured out a way to work that yet, and so what we've done is work with them on a piece of legislation that's going into the Delaware legislature, and what it would do was really return energy efficiency responsibility to the utilities, but at the same time have this energy efficiency utility they set up become a financing mechanism for energy efficiency measures. I'm going back to Maryland next week, and I'll be testifying on a bill that is about creating offshore wind in Maryland. We're working with a group of people in the governor's office in Missouri, along with hopefully the Utility Commission of Missouri. We filed some papers in Oklahoma when they put something on their docket that had to do with the clean air, clean jobs kind of thing. Our House Bill 1365, our fuel switching. We've been in conversations with the Illinois governor. They just said, listen, give us everything that you did over a 4-year period. We'd like to see, your climate action plan, your 57 bills. So we sent them copies of all 57 bills that I signed. We gave them as well all of the executive orders I did around greening of government. So we really worked probably at different levels in about 10 states over the past year on either discrete measures or trying to help governors think about it more comprehensively.
As you talk about all the different states, everything from a Missouri to an Oklahoma to a Maryland, all very different issues, all very different policy agenda items. How are you guys working to create alignment and to create some best practice strategies so that we're not recreating the wheel in all 50 states every time we're doing this?
Well, what's really interesting is one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
So it is important to tailor our work in states to the resources available in the state, to the economic landscape to some extent, to the way that they're already generating electricity, to think about that and what that transition is going to involve. Interestingly, transmission is a very difficult and sort of a sophisticated topic, but the transmission infrastructure matters a lot because interconnection, pulling renewables onto the grid can be a very difficult thing to do. And then, we have to think about the political landscape, because this has become, and I think Steve knows this as well, a very politicized topic. And it's kind of odd because I think energy is one of those things that should not be all that political, but somehow this debate over whether climate change is real or not has sort of sucked into it the whole conversation around clean energy, including things like energy efficiency that's about saving energy and good business practices, where you have a variety of really important businesses and business people in this country arguing that this is the way to go. It still is part of the political argument. So we look at all those things and then we tailor our work to that state. We can help think about a renewable energy standard, but there's still going to be some nuances in that state that are important for us to understand in order for us to say this is something that will work there. We need a national energy policy, right? We really need it, but I think each state has some things that have to, where energy policy work in that state has to be just specific to that state because of the differences.
Sure. Well, Governor Ritter, we have to go to break in a second, but can you explain quickly how the center is funded and how that was created?
Yeah, it was funded first by really 3 or 4 foundations that are interested in clean energy. So there's the Energy Foundation. It's out of San Francisco, California. It really is, the Energy Foundation is funded by a group of different foundations, that the Hewlett Foundation, the Packard Foundation, the McKnight Foundation, a group called Climate Works, and they've really been working on clean energy policy around the country. And my sort of views as governor was very much aligned with what the Energy Foundation thought about energy policy, and so I sought funding from them. There's a group in New York called the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and they provide funding. In Fort Collins, the Bohemian Foundation. The Bohemian Foundation cares a lot about clean energy, but they also care a lot about Colorado State University, and they've been really major funders for the university. And so those were sort of the 3 primary. There's a group called the Argosy Foundation as well. We've recently been talking to industry, in the electrical industry. Take a Schneider Electric. We wouldn't go in and lobby a bill for Schneider Electric, but we certainly believe we've done a variety of things on the smart grid side where Schneider Electric would benefit. And sure. I mean, all the folks involved in smart grid might benefit, but we're looking at some of the big players that might be looking for partnerships at universities. And so Schneider Electric, some of the gas companies, quite frankly, because of what we're able to do with natural gas and all of the things CSU's doing with our natural gas initiative. And you'll find, I think, with less and less federal funding, that universities are seeking these public-private partnerships, and the center's no different than other places at the university where we're looking to the private sector to help fund some of the research.
Well, Governor Ritter, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Governor Ritter and Steve McMillan from the Denver Post, and we'll be talking about some of those public-private partnerships and collaborations that are going on with the Center for the New Energy Economy, as well as CSU. Welcome back to ICOSA's Driving Force Radio. Today we're talking with the director of the Center for the New Energy Economy at Colorado State University, as well as the former governor of Colorado, Bill Ritter. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
And we also have the business editor at the Denver Post, Steve McMillan, with us here today. And Steve, you and I have had so much fun collaborating over the last couple of days about this interview. And I'm just going to toss it to you because you have so many rich questions and background with the governor.
Thanks, Jan. Governor, you talked a little bit about your kind of ambitious schedule with a lot of the other states out there when it comes to helping them craft comprehensive energy policy. What about Colorado? What's happening here? How's the center engaged with this state?
So that's a great question because we have had a lot of different conversations with the governor's energy office, with the governor himself. I've had some conversations. I think that his ambition around natural gas vehicles is really this important place for us to go to, and he's got a real keen sense about what to do and how to do that. That's a good thing. But in terms of just sort of working with legislation, there hasn't been much going on, and I think part of that is the governor developing his own sort of energy plan around that, trying to decide what in fact he needs with respect to legislation. And then I think he's got a Senate that's controlled by Democrats, a Republican-controlled House, in trying to find a path. And he's not unusual in this regard. This is all over America, trying to really find a path where you can chart a clean energy agenda when you have either split control or Republican control in both houses, Democratic control in both houses. It's really important to try and do this in a bipartisan way, and I think this governor is still very much interested in trying to find that way.
Well, I want to jump in with something. Steve and I talked about this, and I know you guys have talked about this before, but there's so much discussion about the new energy economy creating jobs, and there are still so many people out of work. When do you see in your, I know you can't pinpoint this, but is it going to create jobs, and when are we going to see that?
Well, first of all, it has created jobs, certainly. It's interesting, this was the worst recession since the Great Depression. I did this thing that if I had the chance to do it over again, I wouldn't do it, which is a debate on Bloomberg TV, and the subject of the debate was, will clean energy lead the recovery, lead the economic recovery? And I think to think that it's going to lead the recovery is probably wrong. Can it be a part of the recovery? And the answer is yes, it can. If you look in Colorado, the only place in the private sector that actually grew jobs during the recession is the clean tech, clean energy space. I've just seen a report where Colorado went to #1 in the country of solar workers per capita. We're #2 overall, which is something to be #2 overall, because #1 is California and their population's 7 times greater than the state of Colorado. So to be #2 behind them is a pretty significant thing. Obviously, we have Vestas that we talked about the entire time I was governor. They're somewhere still under 2,000 employees, but that's 2,000 jobs we wouldn't have if we hadn't really embraced clean energy policy. Vestas brought a whole host of different suppliers with them, so there's some other jobs that were created that are absolutely part of the new energy economy. There are a variety of good solar plays. We had the recent announcement from GE that they're going to build thin film photovoltaic solar panels here. They had purchased a Longmont company called Primestar, and they're going to use Primestar's technology to manufacture that. But that's just sort of, again, one other example of a company, SMA Solar, that builds solar inverters, a German company. They've never manufactured outside of Germany. They're one of the largest solar inverter manufacturers in the world, and they're manufacturing in Denver, 700 employees. So there's a lot of really good news stories, and we did see growth in that sector during the recession. We've seen good statistics vis-a-vis other parts of the country, but at the same time, I think there's so many things that still act as a drag on our recovery. We can look to Europe and understand that there are things that could happen in Europe over the next few months that could cause the American economy, if not to go into a second recession, to still kind of lump along the bottom. There's good signs. There's a lot of positive behavior. So the economy in many respects is recovering, but it's not all up to one sector to make the recovery happen. And I think, if I were going to fault the president actually in the Recovery Act, in the ARA funding, the stimulus package, I think maybe they put too much emphasis on the job recovery or the job creation aspects around clean energy. It's happened. It's absolutely happened, but it's not the thing that led the recovery.
Did you see anything, Governor, in Governor Hickenlooper's Colorado blueprint that would be considered good news for the renewable energy sector here?
Yeah, I do think that they're still focused on clean energy and the clean tech sector. They understand the relationship between technology and the 21st century sort of energy agenda that I think states like Colorado can and should carve out. The governor, as far as I can see, gets this, understands it, may not have put the same priority on it that I did, but that's really just the difference in style between him and me, and I can't fault him at all for that, because I think he's got a lot of different ways of thinking about the future in a really sort of innovative and entrepreneurial way. His focus on entrepreneurship itself will help us drive a clean energy agenda in this state. So there were absolutely things that were part of the blueprint. I would just say it probably wouldn't have, if I were constructing that blueprint, it might have had a different priority on clean energy. And again, not anything other than just a difference of the two of us and the way we govern.
Well, and Governor Ritter, too, I know that so many things that you guys do are based in collaborations in these public-private partnerships that you spoke about. Can you quickly address some of those before we get a break, and then we can come back?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about how we embark upon public-private partnerships. And I talked about those at sort of the university level, and just the things that we're trying to do to use the private sector to help us fund different kinds of research. But also, if you think about that, we have this solar technology campus that's out east of Aurora, and there, NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, is a part of that, along with Xcel and several big solar companies. And so there's federal dollars that are combining. They're actually using federal researchers to help verify that the research done in the private sector is actually correct, that it's right. And so they have really an honest broker of that. And those are just a couple of examples. A lot on the research side. On the development side, public-private partnerships and just trying to build out, clean energy on public land is a way to think about it. A lot of the work that the Department of Interior has done in trying to expand what they're doing on public lands, they did with the advice, really, of what I would call the private industry players who know that it's important to be able to expand onto federal lands the way they have.
Well, we have to go to break, Governor Ritter and Steve, but when we come back, we're going to be talking some more about how Colorado is really becoming this new energy economy, is really building ourselves as the leader in this around the nation, and we'll be back with more with Governor Ritter and Steve. Welcome back to ICOSA's Driving Force Radio. Today, Governor Bill Ritter is talking with us about the new energy economy, and he's serving now as the director up at CSU's Center for the New Energy Economy. And Governor Ritter, all of this discussion, all this stuff that's going on, both locally and nationally, really begs the question if these clean energy alternatives are really reliable, based on the fact that the grid is absolutely archaic. How are you guys bringing those two things together? It's sort of like putting oil and water together and trying to make them work. How does that work?
Yeah, it's not as bad as you make it sound. I would say that it would be very helpful for us as a country to focus on how we rebuild the grid in this country and how we really connect it. We have 3 separate grids in Texas, so really arguably 4 separate grids. Texas is sort of connected in, but it's got its own standalone in a sense, and that really makes it inefficient to move power interstate. But intrastate, there are some problems as well. You mentioned renewables and trying to make this big push around renewables. Can we really get those synced into the grid? And the answer is yes, but with some work. And some of it's technical kinds of things, and some of it involves policy work. And they're both really important. A lot of the lines running in Colorado are running chock full. CSU has a ranch north of Fort Collins, south of the Wyoming border, really ideal for wind creation. It's looking at putting a wind farm on there, 200 megawatts, so it'd be a significant wind farm. And they had a power company that was going to come in and build it, and they backed off because they couldn't find a real economic place to put that power onto the grid, in spite of the fact that there's just a significant line going right over the ranch, but it's full. And so if they had to pay then to get that power to a substation, they can no longer deliver that power at an economic rate. So there are problems there. Xcel owns a lot of the grid, and that helps Xcel when they're purchasing the power. Xcel just purchased wind here in Colorado last October for 3.2 cents a kilowatt hour. So just to give you an idea, the average cost of power in Colorado is about 6.5 to 7 cents, and Xcel purchased wind power, and it's got what's called a capacity factor of 50%, which is really high. They purchased that for 3.2 cents. That's a significant boon to wind and really to Colorado ratepayers. So you can do it pretty cheaply. There are some challenges of getting it on the grid. What we know is renewables don't sync well with coal. If you have a coal-fired furnace, to put wind on the grid, then you cycle the coal down, take the wind off the grid when it quits blowing, you have to cycle the coal back up. Actually, coal plants weren't meant to cycle. They only have a real limited number of cyclings in their life cycle, and you actually increase greenhouse gas emissions by trying to integrate renewables with coal. So natural gas, that's not the case. Natural gas doesn't have that same greenhouse gas emissions issue from cycling up and down, and it's a much better integrator with wind, with solar, with those kinds of things. The other important thing that we're working on in Colorado is storage. In the San Luis Valley, where we have the best solar in the state, Xcel and Tri-State, we're both looking at building out solar power. And there's some interesting, some interesting plans for developing storage of that solar. So instead of just 9 hours of sun, you actually get 16 hours of sun because you can use a molten salt technology to store solar power for another 7 hours and deliver it to the grid. So there's a lot of good news, but I think transmission is certainly an issue, as is that motorcycle.
Yeah.
Governor, what are the chances that the wind energy tax credit will be renewed before it expires at the end of this year? And the same thing with the solar energy tax credit, which is set to sunset in 2013. What if they don't get renewed? What does that mean for the renewable industry here in Colorado as well as the U.S.?
There's a couple parts that I think, Steve, the investment tax credit that a lot of solar producers and people who build out solar use, I think that's set to sunset in 2015. It's the 1603 grant program that's sunsetting. That was part of, it was put in place as part of the stimulus, been really helpful in building out solar. I think it's going to go away. I don't see this Congress bringing back the 1603 grant program. The production tax credit's interesting because there's a fair amount of bipartisan support. We have in Colorado Republican congressmen, Cory Gardner and Scott Timpton, that both signed off, and Mike Kaufman, 3 of the 4 signed off on a letter supporting extending the production tax credit. I think they're going to try and make it part of the payroll tax extension, which is an interesting thing because I think there's a lot of Republicans that will vote against the payroll tax extension, but people who support the production tax credit might be put in a place of having to vote for it in order to get that production tax credit in place. If we don't put it in place with the payroll tax extension, I don't see it passing in a standalone bill. There probably isn't another good vehicle. They've tried to do something this week in the United States Senate to attach it to a measure, but they've had not real success at doing that. If it goes away, I don't think the CEO of Vestas was joking. He said they will lay off they laid off 3,000 people around the world just because of sort of how the world economy has really hurt this energy, the new energy arena. He said in the United States, if the production tax credit goes away, they'll lay off 1,600 people. Those are Colorado jobs because they're only manufacturing in Colorado. They've got a corporate office in Portland. They have a R&D office in Houston. Their manufacturing is all in Colorado, and I'm afraid for what happens to the Colorado Vestas manufacturing jobs if, in fact, that production tax credit doesn't get extended. But I have to tell you, I'm also, I watch Congress, and I'm befuddled at the division there, the divisiveness, and again, like I said, over energy policy.
We had a story in the Post recently, last month, saying that renewable energy may be plateauing in Colorado, and the reason for that was because it looked like Xcel would easily meet that 30% renewable standard. And on top of that, Xcel, I believe, has cut the rebates for the residential solar panels, which could mean fewer homes actually installing those. What do you think? Do you see a plateauing in renewables in Colorado?
Well, I think as far as the 30% renewable energy standard goes, there is a real possibility that it plateaus. But it's amazing. The reason it's plateauing is because they're meeting the standard. You could probably go to a 40% standard if you wanted to, if the legislature, the governor wanted to go, and Xcel would probably be able to meet it and meet it pretty easily, given if you look at just all that we've been able to do. The 30% standard allows Xcel a credit for anything that they produce in state. So it winds up they've produced everything in state, and so it's not a true 30 that they're producing. They get I think a 25% credit. So they could go to a true 30 and I think go there with the same rate cap in place, and I suspect the folks at Xcel might go along with that if you proposed it. The thing about rooftop solar, I don't think we can really know right now what's going to happen, in part because the price curve on solar is coming down so significantly. So in part, Xcel's rebate program went away because the price was coming down so much, and it was no longer affordable to them as a utility. You know, there was the one day last year where they said we're ending our REC program today, REC being renewable energy credits. They're just going to end it in a day. PUC said no, you have to end it over the period of a year. So everybody kind of knew that was going to happen as the price of panels came down. People didn't know they would come down so precipitously. So I think it's really important, Steve, to ask the question, what's causing that? And what's causing that are the Chinese manufacturing panels at a price far less than we as Americans thought they could do, right?
Well, and Governor Ritter, we have to run to break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about more about solar, natural gas, new products, new markets, and other things, new energy. Don't go anywhere. On ICOSA's Driving Force Radio, today we have Governor Bill Ritter, the director, and also the director of CSU's Center for the New Energy Economy. We also have the business editor at the Denver Post with us, and we've been talking all things new energy. And Steve, before we went to break, we were talking about solar here in Colorado, and now I know we want to switch gears to natural gas.
I had a question for the governor. I mean, you've included natural gas as part of the portfolio of fuels that is going to make up clean energy and help us move to an energy independence. But recently here in Colorado, at least along the Front Range, the hydrofracking, the ambitious drilling agendas of new companies coming in to exploit natural gas has caused fear among homeowners and counties to want to jump in and create policy. What are the biggest things necessary to get natural gas resources flowing here, and protect the environment, and alleviate the fears of homeowners?
Well, I think, if you recall, Steve, we put in place a whole new series of rules back in 2007, 2008. It was one of the bigger fights I had as governor, and yet it wound up working pretty well, and other states actually use our rulemaking as a model. But the fact of the matter is, you've never done in this work, because natural gas drilling exploded to such a significant extent that now, we have a variety of places where we call it the urban-suburban interface, where the natural gas drilling is right up against suburbia. Boulder, the county of Boulder, put a moratorium on natural gas drilling just last week. And so I think, and places, where you have fairly conservative politics in play and oil and gas companies are generally viewed positively, El Paso County's considered a moratorium. I think Douglas, Arapahoe have all looked at this and asked the question, how do we protect, our suburban homeowners? So I think there's a variety of things that could be done. Some of those could be done by the legislature. Unfortunately, a committee just killed a bill that would have had a 1,000-foot offset for drilling. A 1,000-foot offset's not a bad thing to do in a place where you have the ability to horizontally drill. So your drilling machine is 1,000 feet away, but you can still drill, somewhere 2,000 feet from where the wellhead is because of this horizontal drilling technology that the natural gas producers have, or natural gas extractors. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. There's still work to be done on water consumption, water quality issues, deep well injection. All those things are part of hydraulic fracturing and part of drilling. And while we did good work on putting rules in place, I think the amount of water available in Colorado is going to be a question. There's trade-offs that we saw in Texas that had to do with, hydraulic fracturing because it's water consumptive, and ranching because they're in a drought and suddenly they don't have the water for watering cattle if in fact they're going to do as much fracking. And so they've got to make some decisions about those trade-offs. And really I think we can do a lot of that at the state level, and to the extent local government's involved, I think there are even ways to design a template for going in with the local government and saying, here's what the environmental community and the natural gas community both can agree upon. Local government, could you agree to this group of setups, or to this kind of noise reduction, to this kind of road maintenance and road repair? All those things are important for communities.
What kind of fallout are you seeing from the cylinder scandal? Was it a fatal blow to the federal loan guarantee programs that have supported renewable energy, solar in particular?
Well, I hope not, because I think there are problems with the Solyndra loan guarantee. The biggest problem, quite frankly, if you ask me, is that this company was betting on the price of polysilicon panels from China remaining high. They just made a bad bet. They had a technology that they felt could be very competitive as long as the price of those panels didn't come down, and they came down. And that's something I think even at the federal level, people looking at that program should have thought more about when they were making that kind of a significant loan guarantee of $585 million. There are the problems that people talk about that have to do with a contributor who's also investor in Solyndra, contributed to the president's campaign. I quite frankly don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think that's going to go to a dead end. The problem was just that this was their first big loan guarantee. They made a big deal out of it. It failed, and it failed not because their business model at the time wasn't something that you would think about investing in. It's just that it had a really bad premise. Now, there's a lot of other places, including places in Colorado, where loan guarantees work. You remember UQM? They make the propulsion system for an electric car being manufactured in California. Those folks are going great guns. That electric car manufacturer is going great guns. And so I can give you a lot of examples where it's working and where I would hope it would remain in place, but I know it's in peril politically.
Well, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how some of these new technologies are going to be taken to market, how we're going to put them in place, Stay tuned for the next segment of ICOSA's Driving Force Radio. Welcome back to ICOSA's Driving Force Radio. With us is Governor Ritter from here in Colorado, and the, okay, that was jacked up. Sorry about that. Do that again.
Are you ready? In 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back to ICOSA's Driving Force Radio. With us is Steve McMillan, the business editor at the Denver Post, as well as Governor Ritter, the director of the Center for the New Energy Economy up at CSU and the 41st governor of Colorado. And before we went to break, we were talking a lot about solar. We've been talking about new technologies, the whole program. And my question really is focused on this two-way trade conversation that should be happening or might be happening, and a lot of people don't know. Are we looking at other markets to send our new technologies and our services and designs to? And are we also courting inbound investment for the services and designs and technologies that we're putting together? Is there that two-way street going on?
Let's answer the second question first. Are we courting investment? The answer is yes. I made a couple of trips to the Silicon Valley to talk to venture capitalists who were interested in clean tech, clean energy while I was governor. Governor Hickenlooper was just in Silicon Valley recently again. That may be his second trip there. I was just on the phone with a VC guy who had been with Hickenlooper. And so I think that the answer is yes, we're courting it. Actually, we had the third highest amount of venture capital invested in any state last year, in 2011, of all the states in the country. That may be damning with faint praise because of how badly venture capital investment has fallen off during the recession. And we know, Colorado VC companies have had their own struggles. So I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture, but what I'll tell you is Colorado had the third highest amount of VC coming in. Are we part of an import-export market? And the answer is yes. There's some great examples. When I was governor, we helped launch this company called Tendril. It was launched by VC money. GE came in and put a big amount of money into it. Tendril just is in the process of exporting, I think it's 300,000 units that are these smart meter units that go inside the home, help you understand how much power you're generating, where you're generating that power, what the resource is that's providing the power. They've got really amazing technology, and they're exporting them to Australia. Again, we're importing a lot of Chinese panels, but we're exporting the technology. A lot of the technology that the Chinese are using, the innovation was done here in America, a lot of it done here in Colorado. So we're a high manufacturing state where things like software are concerned. We hope to capture that space as well where clean energy, clean tech is concerned. And so we're trying to do it internationally. We're certainly doing it state to state to state. GE's presence here will help. Abound Solar's presence is going to be important in that regard. I also talked to a guy, he has these big parabolic troughs that they have kind of a mirrored system, and they are exporting those panels to Nevada. So they're putting up a big solar array in Nevada using Colorado technology and Colorado manufactured products.
Love that.
You mentioned GE, Governor. What is the impact of Prime Star Solar choosing Colorado for its manufacturing plant? And can you update us on GE's progress here?
So it's interesting because GE, the other state in the competition, was their home state, the state where their corporate headquarters are, New York. And so I believe, again, that GE looked to Colorado and said, there's just this great ecosystem in Colorado. Solar technology, the innovations happening in that space, so many of the things that have happened have come out of Colorado. So I think GE looks at that and says, no, there's a lot of good reasons for us to come. When I was governor, we put in place a tax credit that they'll be able to take advantage of because they're coming to Colorado. So they're using a technology called cadmium telluride. It's different than a silicon technology. It's the same as Abound, same as First Solar in Arizona, and we hope that they can compete. The thing about GE is if they have to compete head-to-head with the Chinese, they have the ability to absorb some losses for a while, not allow the Chinese to capture that market, and be able to prove out that this cadmium technology is the best in terms of solar efficiency and low-cost production. And those are all really important things for GE. So it's brand new. They're just developing the plant. They've got their site picked out. They haven't obviously manufactured any panels. I think that's going to happen by the end of 2013, which is another year and a half away. But it's great to have GE have a presence here because they're such an important player internationally in this space.
And talk a little bit about the new National Business Group Advanced Energy Economy, which is, I think, part of the Colorado Clean Tech Industry Association, right?
Yeah, the CCIA, Colorado Clean Tech Industry Association, became the AEE chapter. So these guys, and I'm on the board of that as well, Advanced Energy Economy, they're a group of people who said, you know, environmentalists are great and they've done a great job of trying to promote this energy agenda, but quite frankly, it's a business case that needs to be made. I've talked about the politicization of this issue, how it can be divisive in some places, and really this group of people say if you can demonstrate how this is good for the United States business sector, if you can demonstrate how there's a profitability inherent in this, and at the same time it has these other advantages that are residual, the environmental advantages, the national security advantages, even the ratepayer advantages, then what's bad about this? And you know, we've seen kind of people be at loggerheads over this. If you can get serious businesses, serious business people in this country to go to Congress and argue to both sides of the aisle, this makes good business sense for America, then we think that's different than just the Sierra Club making their case on both sides of the aisle. There may be different outcomes because of it.
Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to pull out our crystal balls. We're going to see if we can figure out if a national energy policy is going to be on the horizon. Don't go anywhere. Back with Governor Ritter and Steve McMillan shortly. Welcome back to Driving Force Radio. You know, Governor Ritter, we've been talking the whole hour about the new energy economy and what's on the horizon. And, you know, I think I know what your answer is, but I'm going to ask you this question anyways. And it's really around a national energy policy. There have been 10 presidents who have run on an agenda, part of their agenda being creating a national energy policy, and all 10 of them, not one of them has managed to pull one off. Do you foresee that we're going to see any sort of a national energy policy going forward?
Certainly not before November 2012, and I would suspect in terms of a comprehensive national energy policy, it's going to be pretty difficult for the next president to pull off, whoever that is. So are there things Congress can do that could make a tremendous difference? The answer is yes. Even apart from a national energy policy, putting a price on carbon would give clean energy investors what I call market certainty. They want to know the United States, the federal government, is serious about carbon reduction, carbon emissions, and about clean energy. And one way to do that, without doing very much more, would be just to put a price on it.
So are there ways that listeners can learn more about the work up at CSU and at the Center for the New Energy Economy, ways they can connect, ways they can engage?
We have a website. So it's cnee.coloradostate, Colostate, I think it's coloradostate.edu. That's it, cnee.coloradostate.edu. And go on there, or you can just Google Center for the New Energy Economy. But I would ask people to engage even beyond looking at our website. You know, Americans actually really do, believe in clean energy in a big way. There's poll after poll after poll that demonstrates that, and yet we have some kind of a political disconnect because our policymakers have trouble getting to sort of the place that the American people already are.
Yeah. Well, Governor Ritter, I want to thank you so much for being here. Steve McMillan, Denver Post, thank you too. Any final remarks?
No, it was a pleasure. Very interesting, and I think we broke some new ground.
I think we did too. How do we find you, Steve?
I am at smcmillan@denverpost.com. You can find me on Twitter at Steve J. McMillan.
Steve, Governor Ritter, thank you both so much. Tune in next week at Driving Force Radio, drivingforceradio.com, or on Facebook at Driving Force Radio.